Not all the guys teaching about intimacy and relationship out there are currently open to meeting me in this exploration. So I would say definitely take note of the men who are more informed and socially aware, like Nic Warner. For me, it's definitely been refreshing to meet with the men who are already on the same page in recognizing that patriarchy has been an all-pervasive social program, which is not in the favor of either women or men. When that's already the understanding, it opens up a richer sharing between us as professionals, hopefully for everyone to learn from. And today we discuss some inner dynamics of the leadership in masculine and feminine intimate relating. I'd love to know what sinks in for you from this episode. Welcome, everyone, to this provocative and heartfelt podcast, Beyond Patriarchal Sex, a place for both women and men to elevate ourselves, finding out what it takes to live beyond our conditioning and assumptions, not only for ourselves, but also for the coming generations. My name is Devashi Shakti, and you are warmly welcome to be part of these conversations. So, Nic, I'm really happy that you could meet with me today on the Beyond Patriarchal Sex podcast. And one of the reasons I asked you specifically is because I can tell a few things about you, even though we haven't met before. Like what a authentic and, very human teacher you are. Like there's a humility in your personal space that I really recognize as a real one. And also, you have a range in your masculine presence that I feel is probably just always natural in you, but I'm sure has been developed a lot as well. And that range is something that is an important part of this conversation. So, yeah, thank you for saying yes. And I really want to ask you, you saw the name of this podcast and still assumed it was a welcoming space for you to share your perspectives. So, what called you to feel that assurance to speak with me?
Uh, I like first of all, thank you for having me. It's nice to meet you. Um, I like, and there was no assumption that this would be challenging, but I like the idea of debate and of conflicting ideas. And I think one of the biggest downfalls of our society is the fact that we cannot meet someone who has a different opinion and have an open conversation. Um,
Yeah.
and saying that, I don't think my understanding or my idea of what patriarchal sex is probably fairly similar to yours. And with that, there's probably a fairly similar agreement around how detrimental it is.
Yes, yes. So I'm hearing in that you didn't assume we would have totally different viewpoints, really,
No,
necessarily.
no,
Yeah.
no, unless it was like sex based on porn is great, and that was the name of your podcast. Like, no, then we could have a challenge.
So, Nic, I'm going to share with everyone a bit about your background and your bio. So, everyone, like many men, Nic reached a point in life where his only satisfaction was found in the dulling numbness of anything that could take his mind off it: drugs, alcohol, and porn. Unable to face the burden of the life he created, everything else suffered until his only option left was to face everything he had been resisting. And by doing so, discovering that our resistance is the doorway to the next level of life. So, with 10 years of exploring your healing and your growth and your expansion, Nic, you've since worked with hundreds of men, helping them peel back the layers of culturally inherited socially permeated models of behavior and conditioning.
Yeah,
Yes.
sounds about right.
You're a good writer. Did you write that yourself?
I did actually. Yeah.
Beautiful. My approach here, just to make sure that you understand, it's like a curious conversation to discovering collectively exactly what patriarchal sex, intimacy, and relating is. Because it's like naming the invisible elephant in the room. And for myself, having worked really deeply with women, also men, but predominantly women, for a couple of decades, doing deep inner work, tantric work, initiation work, I find that without naming this cultural, social setup that we're all living in, it's not quite enough to focus on the interpersonal work only, is what I have come to after such a long time of working with people. And so I find that there can be a lot of value in having people like yourself coming in and sharing your perception of what it might be. So I'd love to hear if you're willing to share what, if you were asked to define what patriarchal sex is, what might be your answer?
Uh, Something that is predominantly, if not solely, based on the needs and desires of men or of the masculine. Um, Now, there are studies that it's almost 80% of porn is some, in some way, shape, or form, a depiction of violence against women. And there's also a study that speaks about the greater likelihood of a teenager that watches porn early on, from I think it was done around with 14-year-olds, that they see violence against women as okay because of what they see in porn. Um, and the fact is that most people learn about sex through watching porn or through experiencing sex from someone who watches porn. Um, and that would pretty much classify for me what patriarchal sex would be.
Yes, yes, I totally agree. And because I have been working with women so long, I'm really deep in the somatic, psychological, emotional levels, looking at how we kind of perpetuate our own suffering within that as women and how we can become the more initiated, embodied women that know how to not uphold that paradigm as well. Because there's
Mm.
ways that we subtly can do that as women, which has a lot to do with becoming more mature as a woman on an inner level and not just looking to have that acceptance and approval, and being anchored into, that initiated woman space inside of ourselves that can not be looking to fit into that paradigm, not looking to be desired in those ways. So this is not just like a calling out the men. This is very much a patriarchy is a paradigm, not a person. And both men and women have our evolution to move beyond it.
Yeah, I'm a huge proponent of radical accountability, and it's so easy and so common for people to point the finger. And yes, the patriarchy has done so much to damage life on earth and society, and it is not just women that have suffered under that. Um, and then, you know, I have a lot of experience. I work with both men and women at this point, and I have a lot of experience of women being directly affected and wounded and traumatized by men, and vice versa.
Yes.
Um, it's very common that a woman who is impacted negatively by a man then goes on to impact her son or other men in really negative ways, and this cycle just perpetuates. So rather than pointing the finger, actually just taking full accountability for our role in it as individuals. And I teach a lot of men about semen retention, and one of the biggest drawbacks for men in relationship practicing semen retention is their women want them to ejaculate, because they want that validation that they've done the thing well enough to receive praise. And so, there's the faking orgasms, and there are all these things that women do that actually do just perpetuate this patriarchal sex. I would love for everybody to take full accountability, as if their experience was chosen by them all the time. And the deeper we go into that, the deeper we can heal, and then the more empowered we become.
Yeah, beautifully said. And you're in the right place, because that's exactly what this platform is all about.
There we go. No challenge.
No challenge, no. You're in good company. And I remember pretty specifically when I had a client working with me one-on-one, she kind of was complaining. She was venting, she was having one of those moments complaining about men in general, not just one specific man. And she was saying how, why can't they be informed and knowledgeable about how to be with a woman's body, how to relate with a woman's body? And I said to her, after she had a little rant, I said, so do you want to live in a world where men hold the women's feminine mysteries and they are the ones that bring that to you? Is that what you're saying? She's like, oh, no, 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 no.
Yeah, it's like, again, with accountability. So she sits there and she's, all men are the same, and no man understands my body. And okay, so at what point do you actually get to teach a man? Traditionally, women initiate men into this, and this is, the feminine oracle is one of the most underutilized archetypes from women, because they fear disconnection, they fear they might offend him, they fear all of these things, and they really disempower themselves rather than saying, you know what, I don't like it like that. That's unacceptable. Hey, the way that you said that, the way that you did that, this, it could have been done in a different way. Women at every opportunity have a chance to teach men how to be better, not teach men how to be men. That is not your role, and you won't succeed at it. But to teach men how to be more attuned to the feminine body, for example, how to be more attuned to their emotion, how to receive without collapsing. And a lot of this, it comes down to how a woman is actually going to share that message. And when it comes as complaint and nagging and vitriol and as abuse, why would a man sit there and listen and hear what is being said? And can you alchemize through your heart the message that you want to transmit to him, so it comes across in a way that he can receive it?
Yes.
So, yeah, I have a lot of conversations with women who do not share their gift. They do not share their oracle, and then everybody loses. So I think you mentioned in the beginning this emotional maturity of women, which is with everybody, but it's really important, and a really beautiful way to empower ourselves to share a deeper truth, regardless of whether or not it will lead to disconnection or disharmony.
Yes. Yes, I totally agree. And one of the ways I tend to say it a lot to women is that this is our realm.
Mm,
So
mm,
to sit there, be complaining about, why are they not getting it? It's like, actually, this is for us. This is our sacred responsibility to model how you want to be related to. And Nic, there's a survey connected to this podcast. It actually just started as a book idea. And then it was a survey collecting research, which is still in process. And then it became a podcast, so we could have more open conversations about it. So this has been such an organic process, the whole thing.
Mm,
But in the survey, Nic, quite a lot of the women that responded to it have said they really fear saying something to let a man know exactly what you were talking about. I'd like to do that differently. That doesn't feel good. That's not right for me. There's this hypersensitivity around a man hearing it as criticism, as well as this sense of fear
mm.
of being physically, sexually dominated anyway. Could I ask for your practiced male perspective on that?
Mm. Yeah, in the moment, it's a far more delicate conversation that needs to be had. In an ideal world, the conversation is had when clothes are on and when there is less vulnerability. To meet a man when you are both naked or when he's naked, and it's so much more sensitive, and this is where kind of any little hint of criticism can shut him down. And one of the core feminine wounds is I'm too much, and one of the core masculine wounds is I'm not enough. So she has this fear of I don't want to say too much because I don't want to be enough. I don't want to be too much. And then he has this thing of, but am I performing? Am I doing it right? Am I enough? And it's this really painful dance that we go into. Um, so again, saying it in a way that, especially if you're both naked, in a way that he can receive it, and if he's doing something that doesn't feel good, stop. Please stop that. That does not feel good. Can we do it in a different way? Or I'm not ready. Can we just slow down and connect more deeply first? I really want this, but not like that. So one of the, and this comes through practice, but it's this idea of a lot of the time it's no. And then no is a full stop. No is a dead end. No is there's nothing else we can do. Whereas what if it was a not like that? And what if there was a way that your boundary could open up a doorway to even greater pleasure for both of you and even deeper connection, rather than it just being a full stop? No, I really want this, but I need this to be just a little bit differently for it to feel good. Most men want to succeed. All men want to succeed. But saying it in a way that is really going to hurt him. And this is a really great skill from the feminine. When they're in pain, they know the exact thing that's going to hurt the guy to make sure that he feels pain at the same time. Can you say it in a way that will penetrate his heart? And yeah, this is where the gold is going to come. This is where there'll be a slight shift. This is, my love, I need you to breathe more deeply. I need you to hold my gaze. I need you to slow down. And he'll want to do this because he'll see that it's beneficial for both of you. Feminine responsiveness is something that a lot of women need more practice around. Like, how can you show through your body language and through your energy that is so good? That feels so good. But then simultaneously, how can you show, oof, I don't like that? You don't always need words. And, sometimes it's actually better without words.
Yeah, yeah. I often say exactly that, how can it be said with your body, with your whole body?
Mm.
And a lot of the times, having to point out what isn't desirable, there's less need for it when there's more yes, but what is working, right? Because that can set a guy in the right direction, make him feel like, okay, more of that.
Yeah, women are very good at criticizing, and they're a little stingy on praise. Um, generalization. And almost all of my clients are in the same boat of she's really good at pointing out what I do wrong, but it's not often she'll point out what I'm doing right. And we're like puppy dogs. Like we do a good job, praise us, and we'll be, oh, maybe I should do that again because she liked that. So yeah, can you be generous? Can you be generous with praise and generous with love? And you'll definitely get more of what you want and less of what you don't.
Yes, yes. And that's a maturing sexually for the woman to really embody her own desire. And in my
Mm,
understanding, this really is the number one key thing to dissolve patriarchal sex. It's women really embodying their own agency, autonomy, and autonomous desire.
mm,
Because when that frequency is there, when that presence is in her body, there's an immediate reorientation of what's going to play out.
mm, mm.
Because when
Yeah,
she's consciously following him in what's probably a lot of pornographic programming,
yeah.
and she's just being at response to that, that's a pretty sure road to patriarchal sex. If you are a woman who wants to live beyond patriarchal sex, you're going to love the Tigress Path. It's primal feminine spirituality with deep somatic teachings and female embodiment practice. Currently, we have classes online and in person. There's the annual Tigress Bali retreat and more. So reach out on social media or go to thetigresspath.com for details.
There is a common misconception, and it's far more nuanced um, than people kind of. I think the reason it's not spoken about so often is because of how nuanced it is. But this whole idea that the masculine leads, he leads based on her responsiveness. In an ideal, totally polarized, well practiced experience, of which I've never met any woman who understands polarity to have any negative thought about it. And the misunderstood idea is that, oh, it's such a patriarchal thing that the man leads and the man dominates, or the woman has to submit or surrender. And, it's words that are kind of plucked out and misinterpreted and replanted to change the idea of what it truly means. And in a really beautifully polarized moment, the man is leading based on the feminine responsiveness. And take that as the woman is actually leading. So if she's not leading well, if she's not responding well, if she's not responding in a way that he actually can feel and see and hear and grasp, that he will lead in a way that he believes to be best. Because sometimes her lying there completely obliterated and totally surrendered means that he's going to need to take charge in a way that is in service to her and in service to love. So her responsiveness needs to be dialed in, and it needs to be really clear, because although we don't feel as much as women do. And therefore, what might feel clear to you is probably very, very unclear to him. So we're stuck in our heads. We are very much in our heads all the time, because we are logical, rational creatures, and we need to get from point A to point B, whilst the feminine by design is feeling. She's in her body, and she's everything she does changes moment to moment with the truth of her heart, like this rainstorm. It's just like she needs to be tuned into that. And then that way she can inspire him to create a deeper moment. But if her responsiveness is not dialed in, then she's not often going to get what she wants.
Yes, yes. So, how do you see it as a man when the when your partner, because talking about women, you are married, yes. Um, or no,
Technically, no, but
no, okay,
no. I mean, we have a son, and marriage is on the cards, but not yet.
okay.
We
You're in
just
a
have the
committed.
same last name.
Okay, right.
Coincidentally, we have the same last name, but we're in a committed monogamous relationship.
Oh, no way. That's not okay. I had no idea.
If I was born a girl, my name would have been Sarah Warner, and her name's Sarah Warner. Yeah, yeah, and that's the surface of it. So
Hmm.
consider us married, yes, for the sake of conversation.
So coming back to the responsiveness, so a woman is leading from the inner level, yes. And how do you sense that as a man who is aware of that dynamic? Because the way that I tend to describe this from my female perspective is that, to be in that embodied, initiated woman space and engaging in that way, we're already in a primary relationship with this divine eros through our feminine bodies. And if we let go of intimacy and connection and, somatically tracking that, that's when we are not putting out that signal. That's when
Mm,
we're not giving those cues for you to engage with us and from your leadership.
mm,
Yeah. And I know that I think one of your teachers has been John Wineland, right? And I know that
mm,
he learned a lot from David Deida. And, I've been in this field a really long time as well. So you've probably seen, like me, that there is a ton of confusion about polarity and submitting and masculine leadership and dominating. And so what you brought up there is such a under highlighted point
mm.
that the woman is leading, but not in the teaching, telling him way, from a much more subtle, inner orientated place.
Yeah, yeah, and it is, it requires a lot of practice because a lot of women want their man to lead, but then they'll control him how he leads. They'll invite him to lead and he will, oh, but not like that. Oh, but you're making the wrong decision. And it's, this is the micromanaging and the controlling and the mother energy coming in rather than this queen energy of I trust you and I'll follow you anyway. And if you fuck it up, I trust you to fix it. And just really, and this is where the surrender comes in, to just know that he's got it and he'll take care of it. And sometimes, the feminine yearns to be taken deeper than she can take herself. And sometimes, even though there is this a specific texture of responsiveness, he might make a decision that goes against that, knowing because he's attuned that it will take you deeper than perhaps you've realized. Um, Perhaps it's in service to something that you can't see. And this is where he gets to make decisions that are potentially risky because they're going against what he knows you might not really want in the moment. Um, an example, I recently, Sarah flew her and my son from Amsterdam to San Francisco to meet me as I was in between retreats. It's like a 9 or 10 hour flight, and I knew she'd be pretty cooked, but I really wanted to take her to the redwoods, and I knew that there would be medicine there for us, and it was going to add on quite a few more hours to our trip. And we got there, and we get the car, and she's totally not up for it. And I was like, oh, this this is going to be a risk. Is it worth doing, considering I can see how tired she is? And we got there and she really resisted the entire way. And then as soon as we got there, she's like, wow, well, thank you. And it was because I knew that it would serve us, even though she was not a yes to it in the moment. Um, and then this comes down to my practice and my leadership. So, and I might have, if you ask her, she might have been like, yeah, it was great, but I would have preferred not to. But my perspective was that her responsiveness to us being in the forest was, I'm a yes. I'm a full yes.
Mm. Yeah, that's great that she could confirm that your knowing was onto it, and it was probably very life-giving to her in a way, and you knew it would be. But have you also been in a situation, whether it's something like that or in a sexual moment, where you're taking that risk, but it's not received in the way you intended? There was something maybe that you weren't reading, and what happened then?
I mean, often, maybe not often, but yes, for sure. Um, the so this wound of I'm not enough that men carry requires us to perform, because if we're seen as not enough, our self-worth is reflected back to us in diminished capacity. So every time there's a complaint about us, or every time we didn't do the thing right, a less emotionally mature man will take that to heart as if he is not good enough. Um, and it can be really painful. It's like you did the thing wrong. Oh, I'm not seen as good. I'm not seen as worthy. And then this shame spiral, and then all of the reasons why you're not good. And um, it's a real thing for men. And the mature masculine can have something reflected back to him in a less than favorable light, and breathe it in and shift direction and go again, without making it about him, without making, oh my God, I've done the wrong thing, and then going into some kind of spiral. It's like, oh, well, that didn't work. Let's try something else.
Right.
And
A mature man in that moment can pivot, take the feedback and say, okay, let's keep going, even though.
exactly, well said. Um, yeah, yeah, and I spent most of my life not being able to do that, and it
Hmm.
was just like, oh, one of the common pitfalls for men is when they are shamed during sex because they can't stay hard, or they can't get it up, or they don't last long enough, or whatever it is. And then to have that, or even the size of the cock, to have that reflected back to them in the moment of deep vulnerability is gutting. And it's hard to, it's hard to pivot from. Um, and
Yes.
a lot of men, we do these circles on retreat where it's like step into the circle if you've ever been shamed. And most men step in the circle, and then step into the circle if you've ever shamed. And only a few women step in. But it's like, it's one of those things. It's like, your shaming can be as simple as a very, very subtle, like a little sound, or the look on your face. Like, it doesn't have to be. It's one of those responses that a man will very easily pick up on. Um,
So what's the difference then, Nick? Because you're describing a hypersensitivity that man can have
mm,
to be alert to indications of feeling shamed. Can you make a clear distinction of that and what you were saying earlier about giving real, authentic feedback in the moment?
yeah, if you look around the room for everything that you can see that is green, so look around where you are, everything that you can see that is green, and then close your eyes and tell me everything that you can see that's yellow. not so much. But now if you open your eyes and you look for everything that you can see that's yellow, it's like, oh, there's that little thing, and there's that little piece, and there's this little piece. Now, everything that you looked around and saw that was green, some of it might be a little bit more blue, or some of it might actually just be a little bit more black, or whatever it is. But you try to succeed. Your mind looks to succeed all the time. Similarly with the things that are yellow. So if you're going through life looking for all the green things, why I'm not good enough, why I need to do better, how I stuff up all the time, why I should feel like shame. Every little thing that happens, you're going to look for ways to prove, fuck, there we go again. So we're hypersensitive to the things that prove that we're not good enough. And we amplify them. Now, we can also be trained to be hypersensitive to the things that make us feel good. But most men are not.
That sounds like emotional resiliency, perhaps,
Yeah.
to develop. Yeah.
Yeah, for sure. And, some women's responsiveness is going to be a different texture despite meaning the same thing to another woman. Like your full fuck yes might look very different to somebody else's, just as your no, not like that might look very different. And if we're very used to one and suddenly we get another or a different texture of, maybe that didn't mean that. Maybe that meant something else. So I'll just keep going anyway.
Yes.
So yeah, it's all nuanced, and it's all slightly depends on the situation, the circumstance, and the man, and the beliefs, and the wounding, and the woman, and all the things.
Yeah, totally. Because some women can be a bit harsh, and some other women
Mm,
can be so gentle that they're not being clear about what they're actually experiencing. Yeah.
exactly. Yeah.
And there's something that has been coming up a lot with my one-on-one clients recently about wanting wanting to establish a deeper, intimate bond between each other, especially if they've been together for a really long time and they have kids and they are deciding, are they going to deepen the relationship or are they wanting to move on? I'm often working with women in that midlife place. And there's this particular scenario that you're probably familiar with of especially a man who is quite typically masculine, I should say. And so he's not so forthcoming with his vulnerability, with his expression of what's underneath, um, what he would show most people. And in the moments when he does let his guard down and share something, this might be one of those prime moments of feeling shamed if a woman can't receive that and hold that as something precious. It can shut him down in a way that is to both of their detriment. Do you hear that happening a lot with the men that you work with?
It's one of the biggest reasons men are not vulnerable, because they have been before and they were shut down and shamed, and it was used against them. So once bitten, twice shy. And there was a really beautiful, powerful video that was going around on Instagram recently of a man that was sitting on the doorstep outside, and he was playing playing with a spool of wire, and he's deep in contemplation, and you could feel and you could see that he was emotionally affected by it. And his wife comes out and she's like, "Oh, what are you doing out here? I thought you were watching football." And he's like, I am basically I'm reflecting on this spool of wire that I've had for 40 years. And it's now down to there's a few layers of this thing left, and it used to be this big, and it's just this guy was reflecting on the finiteness of life, and in a such a such a beautifully deep way. And I can't remember what she said, but it was something that very quickly shut him down and shut him off. And as soon as she did, you could feel him close, and he's just like, "Oh, fuck, fuck that. Like, why would I bother?" And this is the experience of many men. Like, why bother? We carry so much that goes unseen, and yet there's always by nature, the feminine just yearns for more and longs for more, and we need to be very careful around what we share, because the burden of it being used against us is often far worse than just holding it and keeping it bottled in.
Yeah.
Yeah, that is the experience of many.
I
And then the flips. Sorry.
doesn't say I really feel for men in that place. I really do, but keep going.
Well, the flip side of it is that other men are so overly emotional that they cannot contain themselves, and then they expect their woman to contain them for them. And then the polarity is flipped. And I've spoken to a couple of women that are like, I will not date a man that does men's work, because suddenly he's tapped into this emotional field which he cannot contain. And he loses himself in the expression and in the experience. So, some people are like, men should never be vulnerable. And then some people are like, no, men need to be vulnerable. And we need to share what is true, but that doesn't mean turning women into our therapists.
No.
There's a containment that is absolutely necessary.
Yes. Yeah. Parentifying each other kills eroticism for sure. But I have one time experience being with a guy who was quite perpetually uncontained in his feminine and was always crying, always having issues. And to me, that felt like it was just kind of boring in the sense that I was always the one holding the fort, holding the strength, and it just there was no depth for me in that in that equation. Of course, I didn't shame him. I was loving to him, but there was an end to that when I was young, because I realized that this was just never going to end. But alternatively, with a very strong masculine man, one of the last times that I felt this, actually, it was excruciatingly difficult for him to show me his tears and to share with me what he wanted to say. And it was just palpable how very uncomfortable he was. And to me, it felt like he had given this most precious gift that I was holding in my hands, and I was all ears. And I was, it was like my whole field completely changed to this ultra receptive place. And it was very beautiful and to me, very touching, like a privilege to be invited under that guard. And the preciousness of that isn't just for the moment, it deepens intimacy in the whole bond of the connection. Sex is better, everything is better, there's more affection, there's more closeness, and that continues for quite some time just from that one moment of deepening.
Yeah, it's something that I wish more men knew, is the idea that the emotional connection is what is going to open a woman rather than the physical connection. And this idea of the the positive and the receptive poles of men and women, how a woman's positive pole is her heart, and she penetrates the world with her heart and with her breasts, whereas that's his receptive pole. His positive pole is his genitals, her receptive pole are her genitals, and often we go the other way. So a man will try and turn a woman on by going to her genitals, and a woman will try and turn a man on by trying to open his heart, rather than realizing that we are actually the opposite. And um, you know, I often joke with Sarah where she tries to have an emotional conversation. It's like, you need to go through my genitals first. Like this is how I am as a man. I will open much more. Like there are moments during lovemaking where it's just the entire world dissolves, and all I can feel is the immensity of love that I feel for her. And it is definitely a deeper texture than if we're just sitting on the couch having a conversation. Like, I love her to death, and there is just something when my positive pole is turned right on that my heart is just blasted open.
Absolutely. And it's so mutually beneficial. It puts the woman deep in her body, deep in her feminine energy at the same time.
Yeah.
And what I find with the women that I'm working with currently that really struggle with this holding of a man's vulnerability in a sacred way, in a respectful way, they're actually avoiding their own emotional heart intimacy with themselves. And so
Mm,
to the degree that they're uncomfortable with that, they're not there, they're not available to hold that in someone else. And so
mm,
there's an avoidance and an unconscious fear that I notice in women about really getting it that this is our realm as predominantly feminine energy. And if
mm,
we aren't in alignment with that and being a welcoming space for that, then it cuts off all of the depth that can happen.
mm.
Yeah.
Yeah, I love that.
I'm personally here for the substance of this work and the research project, not for the likes. But if you want to see interesting and prominent speakers become part of this research, there are two things that you could do right now to help make that happen. First one is to follow the Tigress Path on Instagram or Spotify, and to leave a 5-star rating with a review if you can on Apple. These two things genuinely help so much to get this podcast and research on the radar of those who can help expand the conversation wider. And may we all be free from suffering.
And I love that ownership as well of this is our realm, which is so true. And just really claiming that and claiming the responsibility of that and the empowerment of that is really beautiful.
Yes. And I spoke about the unconscious fear, but there's also what can be coupled with that is a lot of resentment from, I don't want to hold you because I've had to hold so much and I've had so much stress and pressure through my female nervous system for so many years. And she's kind of angry at him for that still. So
Mm, mm,
that's where I encourage women to stay with the practice like Tigress yoga or something that lets all of that venting and that emotional detox really move through her, but not at him, not in
mm,
case it's at her kids or at her partner, but like fully unleashing it in a way that's restoring her and healthy for her. And that's why there've been guys that are like massive advocates of the Tigress practice. They're like, hey, when's class on again? Can I drive you? Because they're experiencing the benefit of feeling how different she is when she's been
mm,
there restoring her energy with a group of women and
mm,
attending to herself and really taking it on as this pleasurable place of sacred responsibility that her realm is for her to take care of. We can't complain about what the man is not doing if we aren't attending to that garden that we are and that we have to offer.
yeah. Yeah, it's hard for a man to take you to the depths of pleasure if you can't go there yourself. And and then how do you teach him? If you don't know in your own body what feels good, if you haven't explored all the parts of you with different touch and different depths and different tools and different whatever, how's he going to know? He's just
Ex-
going to be guessing, and then he'll get it wrong, and then you'll blame him for not knowing your body and help him win.
100%. And each other. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Nic, we're coming to the end of the time, I think, but I really wanted to ask you a question because the two conversations that I've had so far with very different types of men, they've both brought up this one main thing when it comes to patriarchy and the male personal experience. Because it seems to me like it's less about women and it's more about men amongst men trying to prove themselves. So, this place that you already named as well today of men not feeling man enough, and that being this internal place of getting stuck that leads to excess yang or a patriarchal way of being. Our last guest on the podcast is a pre and perinatal specialist, and she was talking about it in terms of that energy medicine language of yin and yang. And, excess yang in anyone's body is unhealthy and leads to many different health conditions. So it's the same in the culture, it's the same in society. But what I want to ask you, Nic, is what does it take to feel man enough?
Hmm. There is a necessary journey back to childhood to deal with all of the times where you were not met, where you did not have your needs met, and all of the ways that this has impacted your life. I've been in this work basically full time for 10 years, and there really isn't a modality that I haven't explored. And I've been with a therapist now for about 12 months because prior to that, I was just a no to it. I'd rather drink ayahuasca or do breath work or do something where I'm going to feel it strongly. And it is a slow burn. And I was with one therapist who I just couldn't deal with, so I found another one. And in the past couple of months, I have revealed things about my upbringing that have very much clarified why I live with certain masks or certain filters on life, which I had no idea. And it really impacted the belief that I had about myself. I have an incredible relationship with my parents. It wasn't always like that. It came through doing this work, but to still continually after 10 years dig up these little threads, it's like, oh, that's why I live this way. That's why I have this belief system. And once we start to excavate that, we start to realize that actually we're not broken and deeply wounded. And there are moments in life where perhaps we heard the wrong thing or experienced something that we couldn't metabolize in the moment, and it can all be healed. And once we have that realization and that deeper knowing of our self-worth that is inherent and not based on somebody else and what they say and what they think, then you do realize that that you're okay the way that you are. And that and initiation. Most men haven't been initiated and they live stuck in boyhood. Men that rule the countries around the world are psychologically still boys.
Yes.
So, I mean, that is a whole new discussion. But initiating men or men being initiated by initiated men is a very necessary step.
100%. Yes. And I was listening to some things that you've shared with people before, and I noticed that you highlighted post rite of passage, the being integrated back. And that's something that's not spoken about enough, I feel,
Mm,
because that's the confirmation on the other side, isn't it? That you are going to be treated differently, you're seen differently, you're recognized for having changed.
mm. Exactly. And we go through many experiences of life. I remember when I traveled for the first time to Europe by myself and came back a few months later, and I was completely different, and everybody else was the same. And they treated me as if I'd never left. And it really brought me back to where I was. And I needed to move away. I left Melbourne after that because there was no chance for me to become different. And that integration piece of coming back and being seen and treated differently as a new person is incredibly important. Um, and it allows us to be witnessed and to be held to account of the new person that we are.
Yes, beautifully said, Nic. And I noticed that you take men on wilderness kind of retreats. And I wondered if, as we're winding up to the end here, if you would speak on the value of that being therapeutic, that it doesn't have to be a traditional therapy setting for a man
Mm.
to encounter himself on a deeper internal level.
Yeah, there is a nourishment for men that most men never receive, and part of that is to be around good men, to just be with other men that can see you for who you are and without judgment and hold you to a certain standard, can take you deeper. But then nature is the other one, to be out in nature without demand, without a need to be anywhere to do anything and you combine the two, and it is so healing and so nourishing. And I just got back from Sweden and we were off grid in this forest by a lake, and it was just medicine. Um, so that's something I discovered a few years ago in a men's retreat. We're in the desert. It's like 70 men, and we would just go hiking and practice and talk and eat together. And it was just like, wow, I've missed this in my life. So now it's a non-negotiable. Now it's every year I do something extensive, and I do it for me. And then other men are like, I want to do that too. It's like, great. So let's do it.
Sounds incredibly healing and
Mm,
healthy.
mm, for sure.
So, what do you have that's usually available or coming up that you could share with anyone listening if they want to connect with you and your work?
So I have a few little evergreen products online, from three things to 100 ways to polarize your relationship to uh, a healthy masculine framework. So for men that don't really want to spend a whole lot of money, but want to deepen into understanding who they are and how to be better men. I have something for women called The Simple Complexities of Men, where it's multiple hours of audio explaining in great depth why men do the things they do and how they are and why they are, and how to relate to men without actually losing yourself, which is super important for women because it's about you standing sovereign in your queen without actually losing yourself and giving up anything. Um, and then, I'm at a bunch of festivals coming up over the summer. Um, my I just did an extensive retreat season, which was 6 retreats in 7 weeks, which was too much. So I'm going to take a little break. I have my own personal work that I have coming up that I get to be a part of still. Um, but there's always new things. I'm about to release some things with Sarah, specifically for couples. Um, it's a busy time of life.
Yeah. Yeah. Thanks for doing the work that you do. I can see you're really dedicated and also just so real, about where
Mm,
you are. I don't hear you pretending to be anywhere other than exactly where you're at. And
mm,
I think it takes a lot of inner confidence to be able to, yeah, just feel really certain in who you are, and you stand out, as I said in the beginning, as someone that's just willing to be very real and raw and vulnerable. And it's so needed in a time when there's so much bravado in
mm.
some of the men's work that's out there.
That's for sure. Thank you so much.
Thanks so much, Nic, for coming and sharing today.
Pleasure.
If you enjoyed listening to this episode, please do share it around on social media. And know that everyone is invited to be part of our research in the anonymous survey. Your contribution will help reveal the exact ways men and women can live beyond patriarchal sex and find greater harmony together. You can find the link to our survey and also details on the Tigress Path for Women via thetigresspath.com.